The sun was low over the red trees of Kirill Forest, casting long shadows across the wild path. The air was thick with mist. Insects buzzed. Strange bird creatures sang in the distance. Jace Thorne, a muscular human hunter, walked calmly through the forest with his plasma spear across his back. His clothes were torn from the jungle brush. Mud covered his boots. He looked like someone who had survived 100 hunts and was ready for 100 more. The people in the nearby alien villages called him death-blooded. They whispered stories about him. But he didn't care about stories. He only cared about the hunt. He entered the quiet alien village of Yulkai, a place built from tree roots and stone. The homes were round and low, and the people, tall, thin, with soft silver skin and glowing purple eyes, watched him with nervous silence. Jace wasn't surprised. Everywhere he went, aliens stared. He made his way to the trader's hut, ready to trade beast meat for supplies. But someone stepped in his path, a small figure, an alien woman. She looked poor, her robe patched with old thread, her hands thin, her face tired. She was maybe no older than Jace, but her eyes held deep sadness. "Are you the one called Jace Thorne?" she asked softly. He looked down at her. "Who's asking?" She bowed her head quickly. "My name is Lunari. I am a simple peasant. I do not have wealth, I do not have status, but I came with a request." Jace sighed. "If it's about gold or medicine, I don't carry—" "No," she interrupted. She looked up into his eyes. "I want you to give me a child." Jace froze. The entire village seemed to fall silent. "What?" he said. "My people are dying," she said quickly, her voice shaking. "Our blood is weak. Our children are sick. The healers say the only hope left is to bond with someone from a stronger bloodline, a human, a deathworlder." She looked straight at him. "You are strong. You survived alone. You fight monsters. You are the only one." Jace took a step back. This was not the kind of request he expected after a 3-day hunt. "You don't even know me," he said. Lunari nodded. "I don't need to. I can see it in you. The others can't give what we need. You can," he studied her. She was thin, yes, but not weak. Her hands trembled, but her eyes didn't break. There was desperation there, but also something braver. "You want a child?" he said slowly. "Not love, not protection, just a child?" She lowered her head. "Yes." For a long moment, Jace said nothing. The wind moved the trees gently behind them. "You should know," he finally said, "that I don't make promises. I'm not a hero. I kill things. That's what I'm good at." She looked up again. "I don't need a hero. I need a future." He turned his head slightly. Others from the village were watching now. Quiet, afraid, but hoping. "Why now?" Jace asked. "Why me?" "Because," she whispered, "you are the last strong blood to pass through here before the cold season, and my body may not last another cycle." Jace looked away, jaw clenched. He'd faced beasts with burning skin and acid breath. He'd been hunted by bandits and poisoned by plants. But this was different. This was someone asking not to be saved, but to save her people through him. He didn't say yes, but he didn't walk away. He looked at her one last time and said, "If I'm going to do this, I want to know why your people are fading." She nodded. "Then come with me. I'll show you." As he followed her toward the deep woods beyond the village, the sun dipped lower behind the blood-red trees, and in the air, something heavy and strange was beginning to settle. Not danger, not yet, but something that felt like the start of a story no one would believe. The deeper they walked, the quieter the world became. The birds stopped singing. The air grew colder. The trees, once red and strong, now stood dry and broken. Their leaves crumbled like ash under Jace's boots. This was not just a forest, it was a graveyard. Lunari moved ahead, silent. She didn't speak. She didn't look back. but her shoulders were tense. Every few steps, she wiped her eyes. Jace followed, her carefully, his instincts alert. He had been in hundreds of forests before. This one felt different, not because of any threat, but because of the silence of dying things. After half an hour, they reached a clearing. There were homes here once. Now they were nothing but stone circles and collapsed wooden beams. Children sat quietly in the dust. Thin, pale. Some had bandages wrapped around their limbs. A few coughed weakly. Their glowing eyes looked up at Jace, not with fear, not with excitement, just exhaustion. Lunari knelt beside one small boy and touched his hair gently. "This is my brother's son," she whispered. "He was born weak. His bones bend. His body doesn't grow." Jace crouched beside the child. "What happened to your people?" Lunari didn't answer right away. Then she pointed to a large stone covered in moss. Strange carvings glowed faintly on its surface. "Many seasons ago," she said, "our ancestors were proud and strong. Our blood was made to survive this world, but then we were taken." Jace narrowed his eyes. "Taken?" Lunari stood. "An alien empire came. They changed our blood, experimented, used us, said they were improving us. But when their empire fell, they left us broken." Jace listened in silence. "Our children grew weaker with each generation. Some are born blind, some cannot eat solid food, many don't survive their first year." She looked at him, and this time her voice shook harder than before. "We've tried medicine. We've tried pairing within the tribe. Nothing works, but the old texts say one thing clearly." She stepped closer. "Only a union with a deathworlder can restart our strength. One born of danger, one who survived where others die, a human." Jace looked around. He saw no lies in their faces, no trick in her tone, just a people, reaching the edge of their last day. "Why haven't others helped?" he asked. "Because no one comes here," Lunari replied. "And when they do, they laugh, or they take what little we have and leave." She looked away. "You didn't laugh." Jace took a deep breath. His heart beat heavy, not from fear but from something colder. He had hunted monsters. Now he was being asked to stop a slow death, not with a blade but with himself. He stared into the trees, thinking, "I don't know what kind of child I could even give," he said slowly. "One with your blood," Lunari said. "That alone is hope." Jace looked down at the boy again. The child smiled faintly, despite the pain. Jace stood. He looked at Lunari for a long moment, then said, "All right, I'll help you, but not just with blood. I want to protect what comes after." Lunari's breath caught, not because he said yes, but because he meant more than she ever asked for. Far in the distance, dark clouds began to form, and from deep underground, something else was watching, because not everyone wanted the bloodline to survive. The wind shifted that night. It carried no sound, no birdsong, no insect buzz, just a strange stillness, like the forest itself was holding its breath. Jace Thorne sat by the fire in a half-collapsed stone hut. The roof leaked, the walls were cracked. But Lunari had said, "This was my mother's home, you are safe here." He didn't sleep. His rifle rested beside him, but his mind wasn't on danger. It was on what came next. Lunari entered quietly, carrying a bowl of heated roots. She placed it near him, then sat across the fire. She looked different tonight. Not dressed in rags, but in a robe with faded blue stitching, the color of her people's old royal line now lost to time. "You haven't said anything," she whispered. Jace stirred the food. "I don't know the words for this." Lunari lowered her eyes. "You don't have to say anything. You agreed to give us a child. That's more than anyone else ever has." Jace looked at her. "I said I'd help, but I'm not just donating genes like trading meat." She blinked. "Then what are you offering?" He leaned forward. "I want to understand what this means. To you, to your people, to the child." Lunari looked at him carefully. No one ever asked us that. I'm not like most. She nodded slowly. Then I will show you. They left the hut in silence and walked toward a sacred hollow near the edge of the forest. A ring of glowing stones surrounded a shallow pool. The water shimmered with soft blue light. Ancient symbols floated in the air. Holographic letters of a forgotten tongue. This is the heart circle, Lunari said softly, where life is chosen, not forced. Jace stepped into the circle and knelt beside the pool. This is where it happens? Lunari nodded, but not by body, by choice. Before we bond physically, we bond in spirit. She took out a small crystal and placed it in the pool. A hum filled the air. Put your hand in, she said. He hesitated, then did. The water lit up, showing faint images, a vision of Lunari's ancestors. Strong, proud, walking through fire and ice. Then images of broken genes, failed births, crying mothers. Finally, a light, one path forward, a child with skin like starlight, with Jace's eyes. Jace pulled his hand back. That's the future you see? Lunari nodded. That's the future we need. He stood slowly. I'll help you, he said, but I set one condition. She blinked. Anything. I won't be a stranger to the child. If I give my blood, I stay, I teach, I protect, I belong. Lunari's lips trembled. You would stay? In this forgotten place? Jace looked around at the dying forest and at the child he saw in that vision. I've wandered enough, he said. That night the stars were sharp and clear. Lunari stood beside the sacred fire, her hands open, her eyes calm. Jace stepped beside, her not as a hunter, not as a visitor, but as the beginning of something new. And far beneath the soil, in hidden tunnels carved long ago. Eyes opened, because not everyone wanted this union to happen. Not everyone wanted the child to be born. Some still remembered the old empire, and they were ready to end what Jace had just begun. The stars above looked peaceful, but below the ground, truths were waking. Ugly ones, buried ones. At sunrise, Elder Tirak sent for Jace. The old alien stood under a twisted stone arch near the village's edge, where plants refused to grow, and the air smelled of old metal. His back was bent, but his voice still carried power. You agreed to stay, Tirak said. That means you deserve to know what really happened to us. Jace nodded. No more guessing. Tell me. Tirak turned and led him through the arch into a deep tunnel carved into the earth. Glowing vines lit the path. Long ago, the elder began, our people were not weak. We were builders, warriors, dreamers. Then they came. Who? Jace asked. The Threnarians, an ancient empire that wanted our planet's life code. They saw our women as perfect vessels, our bodies strong, our minds open. Jace clenched his jaw. You were used. Tirak nodded. They changed our genes, made us better, stronger, faster, but only for them. When the empire collapsed, they left us twisted. They stepped into a large underground chamber. Jace froze. All around him were ancient machines, rusted labs, shattered tanks, broken pods. This was no temple. This was a breeding facility. Tirak's voice cracked. After they left, the changes in our blood didn't stop. Each generation grew weaker. Our children could no longer survive full development. He pointed to a wall. An old display still glowed faintly. Genetic stability, 23% failure rate, 91%. Jace stepped closer. But I've seen your people. You're not failures. We're surviving, Tirak said, but barely. Our lifespans are shorter. Our strength is gone. And worst of all, he looked at Jace, pain in his eyes. We can no longer make new life, not unless it's with blood strong enough to repair what they broke. That's when Jace understood. It wasn't just about giving Lunari a child. It was about healing a curse left behind by ancient monsters. He turned to Tirak. Why me? Why humans? The elder walked to a side chamber. Inside was a preserved data terminal still glowing. Because deathworlders like you carry what we lost, he said. Your species grew under pressure. Your genes adapted to pain, to war, to chaos. He pulled up a scan of Jace's DNA, lines lit up in gold. Resilience. 97% host compatibility. 100%. Your blood, Tirak whispered, can do what centuries of prayer could not. Jace stood in silence, the weight of everything pressing down on him. He had been called a hunter, a killer. Now, he was being called a savior. Tirak placed a hand on Jace's shoulder. Lunari is our strongest female, but even she is fading. If she bears your child, it will be our first true birth in 19 cycles. Jace looked at the dark lab walls, at the machines, built to steal life. I'm not like the ones who did this, he said firmly. I know, Tirak said. That's why we trust you. As they walked back to the surface, sunlight broke through the trees. Children stood waiting near the path, watching Jace. One of them stepped forward and handed him a carved pendant shaped like a leaf. For the future, the child said. Jace took it in silence. But something inside him changed. Not just his purpose, his place. That night, Jace stood by Lunari under the stars. He told her everything. She didn't cry. She only whispered, "Then let us begin." Again, and together, they stepped into the sacred hollow. Not as strangers, but as the cure their people had waited generations for. But deep in the black sky, a satellite blinked to life. An old signal had been triggered, and far away, something ancient received it. Something that believed the experiment wasn't over. The wind tasted like ash, the sky was too quiet, and the animals had vanished. Jace Thorne felt it before he heard it, a tension in the earth, like something waiting beneath the surface, something ready to strike. He was in the village's east field, helping Lunari carry water to the small healing garden. She was smiling, more than before. Her hands were stronger now, her eyes clearer. It had only been weeks since the sacred bond, but the change in her was real. Life had returned to her step. The people had started singing again. Jace thought, maybe, for once, peace was possible. Until the scream. It came from the watch hut. A short, sharp cry followed by a thunderous blast. Then the ground shook. Jace dropped the bucket. He grabbed Lunari's hand and ran to the edge of the village. What he saw there turned his blood cold. Dark crafts, black metal, unmarked, descended from the sky like hungry shadows. Dozens of masked raiders armored in scorched bone and glass leapt from the ships. Not thieves. Hunters. But not for meat. For people. The old empire had returned, or what was left of it. The signal from the ruined lab had awakened something. An ancient Threnarian AI core orbiting the planet, still watching, still logging. And it had sent a message to the ones who had funded the original experiments. The old masters. The ones who believed. The project must be controlled even now. They're here for the child. Tirak shouted from the high rocks. They want to destroy the bloodline before it grows. But the child hadn't been born yet. Lunari was barely in her first cycle, and she was still weak. Too weak to run. Jace didn't hesitate. He ran straight, toward the raiders, not away. The first enemy raised a plasma staff, but Jace slammed into him like a meteor, breaking his armor and bones in one hit. He grabbed the weapon, spun, and fired, dropping two more. The villagers began to fight, but their tools were old, their bodies still frail. Jace roared, "Fall back to the hollow. Defend the mothers and the children." Lunari stayed behind, refusing to run. She stood beside Jace, holding nothing but a sharpened farming blade. "I am not leaving," she said. "You're carrying more than yourself now," he growled. You fight for two." She looked at him with fierce eyes. "Then let them see what a mother's fire looks like." Together they stood their ground. Goran the blacksmith swung a hammer. Tirak lit the flame traps, But the raiders kept coming, until something shifted. The trees moved. A low sound filled the air. Deep, old, and angry. Not human. Not machine. It was the forest, awakened by blood, by fire. Vines surged from the soil. Roots struck like whips. The sacred land itself began to defend its own. And through the smoke, Jace saw them. Children. Not running, not hiding, but carrying food, guiding the wounded, protecting the weak. They weren't afraid anymore. They believed in something. They believed in him. By the time the sun set, the sky was clear. The ships were destroyed. The raiders were either dead or fled. The village stood, but the garden was scorched. Half the homes lost, and many were wounded. Jace walked slowly to the center of the hollow, his body burned, armor cracked. Lunari came to him, bruised but standing. He fell to his knees, exhausted. She dropped beside him, resting her forehead against his. "You stayed," she whispered. "Always," he said. And under the broken stars of a scarred world, a promise was made. The old blood would never return. A new one had already begun. In fire and faith. Smoke still hung in the air. The flames were gone, the bodies buried, the enemy driven back, but peace had teeth now. It had bled. Jace Thorne stood at the edge of the burned field where the garden once grew. His hands were wrapped in cloth. His chest was bruised. His eyes uncertain. He wasn't a hero. He had never wanted to be one. But now everyone looked at him like he was more than human. Behind him, the village had changed. The people walked taller. Children ran instead of hiding. Lunari smiled when the wind touched her face. Life was trying again, but Jace still hadn't answered one question. Would he stay? Elder Tirak found him by the ruins of the well. "You've done enough," the old man said. "You gave your blood. You gave your strength. You can walk away now. No one would curse your name." Jace didn't answer right away. Then he asked softly, "Will the child survive without me?" Tirak hesitated. He might not. But he will never know where he came from. Later that night, the village gathered around the fire pit. The stars blinked above like silent witnesses. Lunari stood, belly small but beginning to show. "I asked him to give me a child," she said aloud, "but he gave me hope instead." She looked around at the circle of tired but smiling faces. No matter what happens, this child is the first of a new people, and that makes every step worth it. Jace stood at the edge of the firelight, listening. He didn't want to speak, but truth pulled him forward. He stepped into the light and faced the people he had saved. "I came here to trade," he said. "I didn't come to stay, didn't come to protect anyone. I just wanted to hunt and move on." He looked at Lunari. "But you stopped me. With your voice. With your pain." He turned to the crowd. "You all showed me something I didn't think still existed, a reason to fight that wasn't just survival." He took a deep breath. "Now I'm making a choice. Not because I have to, but because I want to." He looked at Lunari, her eyes wide, full of quiet light. "I'm staying." A long silence followed. Then a cheer rose. Not loud, not wild, but full of something old and strong. Belonging. That night, Lunari sat beside Jace as the fire died down. They said little, but when she placed his hand over her stomach, he felt a heartbeat. Not his, not hers. Something new. And for the first time in his life, Jace felt like he wasn't just made for killing. He was made for building something too. Far beyond the forest, satellites still blinked, watching, calculating, but none of their data could explain what had just been born in that village. A choice, and the power of choosing life over everything else. The rains came softly, not with thunder, not with storms, but with kindness. For the first time in many years, the water that touched the cracked earth felt warm. The soil drank it. The roots whispered, The trees swayed like they remembered something, ancient. And in the center of it all, in a quiet stone hut lit by glowing moss, a new cry filled the air. Lunari lay back, sweat on her brow, tears in her eyes, not from pain, but from joy. Jace sat beside her, holding the newborn carefully. The child was wrapped in soft cloth made from forest silk, its small hands already reaching up, strong, steady, half human, half alien, whole in every way. The elder women whispered blessings. The villagers waited outside in silence, their breaths held. When Jace stepped out with the baby in his arms, a single word passed through the crowd like fire through dry grass. Alive. They named the boy Thornari, a blend of both bloodlines. A name no one had ever spoken before. He was the first of a new kind, not a weapon, not an experiment. A beginning. Days turned to weeks. Thornari grew fast. He laughed often. He grabbed Jace's finger with surprising strength. He slept beside Lunari, with a quiet peace that made the stars feel closer. But it wasn't just the baby that changed. The village bloomed again. The gardens returned. The children stopped coughing. The soil grew richer, and the trees gave sweeter fruit. It was as if the land itself had waited for this child to arrive. One evening, Jace sat by the fire, Thornari in his arms. The boy's eyes, bright violet like Lunari's but shaped like Jace's, stared into the flames, calm and alert. Lunari placed a blanket over Jace's shoulders. "You look tired," she whispered. "I feel something I've never felt before." He said, "What is it?" Jace looked at the boy. Like I matter. He began teaching the other children how to track, how to survive, how to defend without hatred. They called him Stonehand. He built shelters, repaired broken wells, taught stories with pictures in the dirt. The village gave him no crown, but they gave him something better, a place. As Thornari learned to walk, he followed Jace everywhere, tripping over stones, laughing, always curious. He didn't cry when he fell. He stood again and again. But peace, even when strong, attracts watchers. One night at the edge of the forest, a strange shadow stood, metal armor, scanning eyes, a Threnarian retrieval unit, silent, patient, waiting, recording. Inside the village, Thornari slept soundly, but the machines had seen enough. The experiment had succeeded. And now, it was time to report back. The next morning, Elder Teary called a meeting. He had found strange tracks in the hills. "We are being watched again," he said. Jace stepped forward. "Then we don't hide. We stand." Lunari stood with him. "We will not give our child to the stars. He belongs to this soil." Jace spent the next days preparing defenses, traps, alarms, signals hidden in the trees. But nothing came. The watchers had vanished. And yet Jace knew they would return. Not for war, but for what he had created. One night, Thornari woke crying. Jace held him close, rocking gently. "It's all right," he whispered. "I'm here." Lunari sat beside him. "Will they try to take him?" "Yes," Jace said. "One day they will." "And will you stop them?" Jace looked at his son, calm again in his arms. "No, I won't stop them." He looked at Lunari. "I'll teach him to stop them himself." Years passed. Thornari grew fast, taller, faster, sharper than any child the village had known, but kind, gentle, curious. He loved animals, he loved stories, and he never forgot the words his father told him every night. "You were born from strength, but you must live with heart." The Threnarians never returned, not with armies. But across the stars they heard whispers of a forest child who lifted stones 3 times his size, of a boy with human hands and alien eyes who calmed beasts with a glance, of a people reborn. And when Thornari stood atop the cliffs one day, wind in his hair, stars above his head, he asked Jace, "Did you ever think you'd be a father?" Jace smiled. "Never." Do you regret it? Jace looked at him, strong and proud. Only that I didn't find you sooner. And when the galaxy finally came calling, when scouts arrived seeking the truth of the forest child, Thornari didn't run. He stood at the gate. Not with fear, but with the fire of both bloods in his chest. And behind him stood a village that would never fall again, because it had chosen its path. Because a woman had dared to beg. Because a human had dared to stay. Because a child had been born, not to save the world, but to begin it again.